Hi, I'm Dana and I have epilepsy, and I'm going to talk to you about resources, legal resources out there for people with epilepsy. I just have to disclose that even though I'm an attorney, this is not considered legal advice. This is just for informational purposes only. If you need legal assistance, go seek a legal clinic or legal representation from an attorney in your area. I may be in a different jurisdiction and the law constantly changes, so I'm not going to guarantee that any of this information is accurate, okay? So first of all, we have rights, and not only do we have the rights that are afforded to the general population, but there are a lot of laws that give us rights as part of the disabled population, because epilepsy is considered disability. I'm going to post some websites that kind of give you a brief overview of some of these rights. One example is the disability.gov website, the A Guide to Disability Rights website, and Questions and Answers about Epilepsy in the Workplace, and the Americans with Disabilities Act. We have the right to request a reasonable accommodation to the which is generally like a modification to accommodate our epilepsy. We have the right to request that in an employment situation, or in a housing situation, or in other situations. And this is so that we can become independent, productive members of society despite our epilepsy. So this may, I'm going to go through a couple laws that pertain to reasonable accommodations. One is the Fair Housing Act. This affords us rights, like our right to privacy, for example. I was actually asked on a previous application to rental application to list my medical conditions, and when I asked the landlord why, he said he specifically had a previous tenant with epilepsy and that he didn't want someone with epilepsy. Well, it's important that you know your rights, because you do not have to disclose that. So knowing that, I did not disclose that I had epilepsy, and I was granted the apartment. They're not allowed to discriminate on people with epilepsy. So check out the Fair Housing Act. The second one is the Americans with Disabilities Act, especially Title I and Title V of the Americans with Disabilities Act. Now, it might be interesting to know that the primary sponsor was former Senator Anthony Lee, aka Tony Coelho, and he himself had epilepsy. So needless to say, his original intent was for the Americans with Disabilities Act to apply to people with epilepsy and incorporate the people with epilepsy. Unfortunately, the Supreme Court narrowed the scope of the Americans with Disabilities Act on a case-by-case basis. They started to say, well, in this case it doesn't apply to people with epilepsy, and in this case it doesn't apply to people with epilepsy. So the legislation went back, and in 2008 they amended it, and they said, no, we're going to go back to the original intent of the legislation, we're going to put it in stone, and we're going to make this act clearly incorporate people with epilepsy. So it's now broader with the amended 2008 Act. Also, another good resource out there is the Rehabilitation Act of 1973. This also addresses rights and reasonable accommodations and laws to protect people with disabilities. So check that out if you have any questions. Another applicable statute is the Family Medical Leave Act. If you are a person with epilepsy, or you are a loved one or caretaker of a person with epilepsy, you may qualify to take leave, extended leave from a job without the risk of losing that job under the Family Medical Leave Act. And this is especially applicable if you might undergo if you have to take like a 3-month leave for surgery related to your epilepsy, or if you're testing a new drug and you have a big cluster of seizures or something. Before quitting your job, check out with your human resources department or your personnel department at your job, or if you don't have a human resources or personnel department, check out with like a local nonprofit or advocacy group or legal clinic or an attorney. Another really important rule is HIPAA, the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act of 1996. And while HIPAA mostly addresses privacy laws when it comes to your medical records, it also has a section in there that addresses transferability of health insurance coverage. So, I know that a lot of people with epilepsy have problems getting medical coverage, or if you lose your job, you may be concerned and you want to keep your coverage. HIPAA may allow you to keep that same coverage from your old job and take it with you as you're unemployed, or it may even allow you to take it with you to your new job as long as you pay out of pocket for that. So if you do find yourself in a bind and you're looking for health insurance, then check out whether HIPAA applies to you and whether or not you can continue your health insurance coverage through HIPAA. And lastly, when it comes to health insurance, there is a rather new law called Pre-Existing Insurance Coverage Plan. The URL is the pcip.gov. This is especially convenient if you have been denied health insurance due to your epilepsy, or because of the new acts, they may not deny you, but they may inflate the rate that they would charge you for your health insurance. If either one of those apply, then check out PCIP. Some other really good resources there are state disability programs out there. Like they may be called the Department of Rehabilitation or Office or Division. Sometimes they include the words vocational rehabilitation, and they may help you in assessing your disability needs and your reasonable accommodations. They may help you in actually paying and funding some of your training or your schooling and helping you seek a position that can work with your special needs. So check that out. Also, there are state disability programs. These are more related to short-term disabilities. So again, it might be useful if you are about to undergo surgery and you need to take 3 months off. See if you qualify for the state disability program near you. Also, there is federal disability under the U.S. Social Security Administration. There's two programs there that someone with epilepsy may qualify for. The Social Security Disability Insurance and the Supplemental Security Income. A common issue between people with epilepsy and the law is the driving laws. Each state has their own driving laws when it comes to whether or not a physician has to report to the DMV whenever a patient has a lapse of consciousness. And certain states say it's mandatory for physician reporting, other states say that it's up to the discretion of the physician. Either way, we are obligated to disclose if we have had a lapse of consciousness according to the application on the DMV. And it's really important to keep open, honest communication with your doctor, because that will probably result in better control of your seizures and ultimately in you receiving a driver's license. Not only that, but whether or not you disclose to your doctor or to the DMV your epilepsy, you can still be held civilly and even criminally liable for an accident, even if you are legally driving with permission of your doctor and the DMV. So it's more important that you get control of those seizures and that you're forthcoming with your doctor than it is you trying to remain secretive and get a license, because you don't want to be held civilly or criminally liable. Lastly, there's advocacy groups out there. And it's one thing to know your rights, it's another thing to know what to do when your rights have been violated. I would suggest going to one of these advocacy groups and talking with them and seeing if you can either be referred to an attorney or if they will handle your case. And lastly, there are two government agencies. There's your state Department of Fair Employment and Housing, or the equivalent. I'm putting up the California URL here. And then there's the federal Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. So that summarizes some things that I now know that have helped me in the past and hopefully will help you in your future.